The transition from being a tradie, a contractor, a technician, or whatever it is you call yourself, to becoming a business owner is a very defining and inspiring moment for anyone. In this episode, we're going to discuss what that transition looks like in the space of the strategy, the structure, and of course, the practical application. Enjoy the show. Rob Kropp, welcome back to the SiteShed podcast.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. Good to be
Should
here.
call this the Rob Kropp podcast lately.
Oh, yeah. It's so good to be back.
For you guys that are tuning in for the first time, Rob is no stranger to the show. He's been on the show a number of times, and actually recently we just completed a series with him. But we've come back today here because we wanted to talk about something a little bit more specific in the space of how you can grow your the profits within your business, free up a bit of time back with your family, so on and so forth. And it comes in the way that you essentially structure your business. And so what we're going to be talking about in the next couple of episodes is essentially how you can apply a bit of logic, a bit of smarts to the existing structure within your business. And more to the point, look at where your business should potentially be, where you want it to potentially be, and design a structure within your organization that's got you something to strive towards, and you've got some stepping stones in order to get there. So, Bobby, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Can't wait for today because I believe this underpins all sustainable growth in a business. So yeah, looking forward to talking through it.
I honestly, so many years ago, the great Mr. Al Levy was on the show, and he was talking to me about organizational structure, and I'll put some links to all those episodes in the show notes for you guys that want to go check that out. But that really formed the pinnacle and a turning point, I think, for me understanding from a strategic perspective within a business, how important it is to have an understanding of what your organizational chart needs to look like in order to get the result. And from then on, it's all, everything's really fallen into suit for us because we understand where we need to go, and which means we understand what team we're going to need in order to get us there at what point in time. And it's quite a simple, I suppose, methodology. Perhaps in practice, it's a little bit more complex if you're not familiar with it, which is, I guess, what we're trying to address here in the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think it's I think with I got two backgrounds. One of my backgrounds is in HR, and one of my backgrounds is in numbers. And the financial aspect of my background is numbers is the language of business, but people are the heart of the business. And I think when you get the structure of your business right, that's what unlocks all the growth. Because I think one of the biggest challenges for a lot of business guys is that they hit a point in business and they just get stuck. Like it just becomes this elusive barrier. And what I find it is for most trades businesses, it's around that $1 million mark, they always get stuck. And there's a number of reasons of why they get stuck. But fundamentally, if we boil it down, it's because they've grown to a point where their structure isn't conducive to growth. And that's why they can't grow no matter what opportunities are there in the marketplace, what opportunities present them, no matter how busy they are, they literally just can't get ahead because their structure isn't evolved enough to be able to keep unlocking. And so, yeah, I can't wait to be able to talk through and pull it all to pieces to be able to help all the listeners pick it all apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think the defining moment for a lot of you listeners and viewers out there, and if you haven't come across this realization yet, trust me, you're going to. It's the whole conversation around, well, if you need to get to this next stage in business, you're going to have to at some point hand things off to other people. And so, that might sound like common sense, but that whole reality of having a structure around the way that you design your roles, your responsibilities, the positions within the organization, your organizational chart, the way, all of that sort of stuff, it becomes extremely relevant.
Yeah, and I think, well, as I say, common sense isn't always common practice. And I think when I think about it, when we distill it down, it's because a lot of guys get caught in this mindset that the longer and harder I work, the more money I'll make. No one's as good as me, and it saves me time and energy and money if I do it myself. And so what ultimately ends up happening is They get out of the ground. They might put their first or second tradesman on, maybe an apprentice. So they've got 2 or 3 guys or girls working for them, and they can start to build a little bit of a team around them. But they get to that point where they know they need to delegate. They know they need to relinquish control, but mentally, um, they're not ready to, or they don't know how to. And that requires them to shift away from an identity point of view, but also shift away mentally, skill set wise, experience wise. It's no longer about being a great tradesman. It's now starting to be a great businessman. And that
Mm,
requires a huge shift for a lot of business owners, because a lot of people got into business because they're very good at their trade, but
yeah.
being good at your trade does not make you a good businessman, because they're completely different skill sets. And at some point in time, you have to make that decision where I'm going to now start running a business, which requires me to hire team, because team is the only way that they can absolutely move forward.
I mean, this in truth, Bobby, is the reason that I started the Sideshow podcast back in 2016. It's to bridge the gap between what we know as tradies. Obviously, I used to be a plumber myself, so I was trained in how to lay drains and that kind of stuff. But going through the apprenticeship in the Australian system anyway, essentially you go through, you do your course, and when you finished your licensing course, it's like, right, off you go, run a business, but no one teaches you about any of that stuff. And so you're right. Like at some point, has to be, and in truth, once the penny drops for this, like this moment within an individual and their business, it's an ever evolving state of taking one hat off and putting the next one on. And I think that's just the dynamic of being a business owner. You were never, and it's also, it's the advantage and the disadvantage, I think, as well. Like you never stuck in any one area. You're always evolving in different things. Like last year, I spent 12 months building out a HR, HR's recruitment funnel for our business and that kind of stuff. That's great now, but now I'm not in there anymore. Now I'm in marketing, and so you're always doing a different thing, right? Which is cool, because I think, and maybe we'll touch on it today, but the ability to be able to focus on something, build it out, systemize it, document it, hand it off to somebody else, and then move on to the next thing. I think that's the game. That's the ultimate way to be removing yourself from areas of your business which can facilitate growth and scale.
Yeah, correct. And I think we have to fundamentally accept that if if someone wants to grow a trades business, and it doesn't matter if you're in the maintenance space, the service space, the project space, you have to hire a team. You cannot get around that. Now, I know that in our client base, we've got someone who sells product in the construction space. They're doing they've got a $10 million run rate, and we can count the number of team members on their hands of how many they have. But they can do that. When we first met this guy, he was doing $1 million a year. Now he's doing $10 million a year. But his business, from a structures point of view, isn't a complex structure, because it's all about product in, product out, and it's a very systemized business because it's about volume of orders. And so you can do that with a small team. But we got a guy, and we're only on a mastermind call this morning with our clients, and he's doing $10 million a year, but he's got a team of 50.
Mm,
And that's because he's got estimators, project managers, admin, financial controller, um,
sure.
about 40 odd people on the ground. And so when you're running a business that in the trades and construction space, the size of your business is more often not a reflection of the size of your team. Because when we boil it down, yes, there's materials in jobs, but you sell labor. And so if you want to build a decent sized business, you have to build team, and there's no way around it. And so
Sure.
I think a lot of guys in the trade space get stuck because um, they're pretty good at hiring their own. They're very good at hiring tradesmen, leading hands, apprentices, and all that kind of stuff. But then when it gets to relinquishing control and hiring people that like admin and bookkeepers and PMs and estimators, that's where the hard part comes. And that's why so many business owners don't get over that $1-ish million mark, because anything beyond that is all about building out operational structure, not just team structure on the ground. And that's why they get stuck so much.
Sure. So, I mean, in this first episode, and we're sort of well into it, but we're really focusing here on, what that transition from a technician or a tradie or a contractor or whatever you can call yourself is like into a business owner. And I'd say the defining differences there are, that like as we kind of touched on, where you're taking that hat off for the guy that's climbing ladders and swinging hammers to the guy that's okay. Well, now I'm a little bit more numbers focused and more strategic about what we do, about how the direction we want to grow or shrink. I should add. It's not always about growth. I think some people get so caught up in this whole, these cliche clickbait things that you see all over Facebook. It's like grow your trade business or get off the tools. I think ideally, hopefully, in this little next couple of conversations, we can touch on some of the realities behind where your strength within your business lies and how you can go about removing all the other stuff that you're not trained in and that you don't consider you're good at, because it's not always about getting off the tools. In fact, a lot of our clients, especially some of the builders out there, they want their time to be focused on the job. They want to be on there managing the site. They want to be doing that. They don't want to be worrying about the invoicing and the payroll and the ordering and all that kind of stuff. So I think don't always get sucked into this whole mentality where you this whole get off the tools or whatever it might be, grow your business. Like, I think there's the strategic conversation behind this really needs to drive what we're talking about here in the space of what it's going to take you to transition from being a technician into being a business owner.
And I'll talk that through in our next episode when I actually draw out the structure, and I'll talk around the 3 different components and how to navigate that growth. But there's definite sweet spots in terms of what a business owner looks like. And I'll talk in terms of rough turnover brackets and what that structure looks like, because there's sweet spots and there's ugly zones. And I'll talk through them, because then it'll give the listeners a bit of an idea of where they should be aiming and what steps they can take next to get there. Because you're right, some people, you build a business that works for you, not the other way around. And you've got to be able to make the choice. What do I want my structure to look like, which is going to give me the lifestyle that I choose? And so you've got to design your structure to reflect what you want to be able to achieve in your business. And some people, whilst they might be good at business, some people just have to be honest with themselves that they just don't want a big business. And so it's about having that self-awareness around them to be able to go, well, what are my capabilities? What are my sweet spots? And how big a business do I really want? And that's the real good questions.
And you know what? I've been in this situation actually. So when I was probably going through, I would have been maybe a 3rd year or 4th year apprentice or whatever. And I worked for I was working for a plumbing company in Sydney, and they had 100. We had 100 guys on the books at that point in time. So it was pretty big. It was like commercial construction sort of based business. Great company to work for, good culture, good fun, lots of young guys, But I remember talking to the business owner, and I'll never forget it. He goes, Jonesy, I made more money when I was running me and 6 other guys than I do now when we run 100. And he goes, without a fraction of the stress and the headaches. It cost him his marriage. It cost him a lot of things, as you can imagine. But the point is, sometimes the big view is polarizing, and we don't really understand the complexities of it. And a lot of people say, "Oh, we want to grow the business. We want to have 50 trucks on the road." I'm like, go in baby steps, because you might find when you're halfway there that is not the case.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's about building the structure that works for them. But I think the big principle that a lot of guys miss is that the reason why they get stuck and trapped and like caught in their business working big long hours is because they're literally wearing all the hats.
Sure.
It's the biggest problem, and it comes from that mindset where, like I said before, it's the longer and harder I work, the more money I make. They also think that it saves them time and energy, money, if they do it themselves. And that's why they have all those hats on. And I know that you got to think you've got the admin hat on, you've got the bookkeeping hat, you've got the project management hat, the supervisor's hat, the estimator's hat, the owner's hat. You're wearing all these hats. But the reality is you're trying to be all things to all people, and you're sucking at all of them. And so whilst business owners think that they're saving money, what it's actually doing is costing them an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And in economics, it's called opportunity cost. And so when I'm talking to clients, one of the best things that I get them to do is unpack their week to be able to get them to see where all their time is going. And what that does is help them realize that they're spending their time on what we call as LVTs, or low value tasks, and they're running to the suppliers, picking up stuff, taking it to site. They're um, coding transactions in their accounting package. They're doing the admin function because they do it because they want to keep everything else moving along, because they treat their own time as free, and they spend 10, 20, 30 hours of their week doing all these low value tasks. But when they look at it, they're doing $20 or $30 an hour tasks, which they could pay someone to do that, at the expense of winning that next strata manager, winning that next job for the builder, um, winning a big contract that's worth $200,000, $500,000. So they're spending time to save money, but it's at the cost of their family life, and it's at the cost of the growth of their business. So I think when someone gets their head around that they're thinking small when they think they're saving money, because I would rather them flip that conversation on its head, thinking, well, instead of thinking, what can I do to save that? It's got to be, well, what's that actually costing me? And when they can get their head around that, that's what unlocks their mind to be able to make really good changes from a structures point of view.
Mm. It kind of ties into, I guess, like, that whole conversation around knowing what your like effective hourly rate is, like working that out, because that kind of drives the decision, right? And and then of course knowing your labor efficiency rates and that kind of stuff, straight from old Greg Crabtree's Bible over here, understanding those numbers really can help you get clarity around okay, well, why am I spending my time in the, or maybe not even you, to the, more to the point, like one of my developers at the moment is hemorrhaging because he's so busy, and it's because he won't create any processes to offload the tasks to the two staff he has, and it's like, this is just because you haven't done the work to get rid of it, and like, so it's not always about you. It's sometimes it's about understanding, okay, well, if I want to promote this person into this position, then I've got to get rid of these tasks, things off their plate so they can do that, like.
And I think one of the biggest challenges is, and I always push this point with clients when I first meet them, is that a lot of guys coming to me going, Rob, I need this system and I need that process and I need to systemize this and I need to systemize that. And fundamentally, systems are important, but systems are important at a certain size in business. Sure, you can do little systems along the way, but the most important thing, I believe, is structure. Because when you get your structure right, you buy back time. And then when that time, that's when you've got the time to be able to work on systems and processes and efficiencies and optimization. But if you don't have the time, then trying to systemize along the way is a waste of time. And if you don't have a team around you, then what's the point in creating systems for people to follow if you've got no one else to follow them?
Absolutely,
So I
yeah.
think workflows and checklists and admin operations bibles and all those types of things, are they important? Absolutely, but they come further down the line. So if any business owner is doing $500,000 a year, $1 million a year, 1.5, $2 million a year, sure, get some systems and processes in place. But when you're in that phase of business at that size, the most important thing is you can do is optimize your structure, which unlocks the opportunity for you as the business owner to get time back. When you get time back, then you've got the ability to work on your business and make the changes, improve the systems and processes in your business. But don't try and worry about systems and processes up front, because A, you don't have the time, and B, more often than not, the business owner is the worst person to develop systems anyway. So why not get the right roles, the right people, and then get them, leverage off them to be able to
Yeah.
systemize your business for you.
The reality is too, for and to sort of to give credit to that comment, like there's very little point in you as the director of a business, right? For example, to go and create the systems or the standard operating procedures for the accounts receivable department. Like, you don't know shit about that, and whatever you were doing previously, you're probably screwing it up, which is why you've got to hire someone.
Yeah.
So you're better off getting people onboarded, finding out where the bottlenecks are, and then creating a process on how to do it. And this is an ongoing evolution in business. It's very much a case of throw mud at the wall, see what sticks, and then dial it in with systems.
Correct.
So,
And I think a great example of that is, and I met with a new client just yesterday. on one of our strategy calls, and we were mapping his structure. And these become the basis of how we grow our clients' business. This structure conversation underpins all the growth. And I'll show you on our next episode when I draw out this structure. But what I always get clients to do is go, right, think about your week and show me a pie graph of what that looks like. And this guy's doing just about 100 grand a month. So he's doing about 1.2 a year. And he goes, Rob, I'm just getting bogged down. I'm just doing all this admin stuff. I'm like, great, let's go get an admin person. Oh, but what am I going to get them to do? I'm like, mate, don't worry about fixing their role, because that's like getting a cleaner before the cleaner. That's like cleaning before the cleaner comes. And I said, let's go to market and let's clarify the role. Let's hire the right person. But let's just not get any admin person. Let's hire someone who's worked. This guy was a Sparky. I'm like, let's hire someone who's worked at a supply shop or a landscaping business, a construction company. They know what job management systems are like. Let's get a part-timer for 20 hours a week who's had experience and pay for that experience. Let's get them to come into your business. There goes 20 hours off your plate. You can then go and focus on running your sites better and estimating and pricing more work. And then that person can systemize the shit out of their role along the way, and happy days. It's a win-win scenario. And so that's why I always say that it's position first, person second, process third. And you've got to do it in that order rather than trying to worry about processes first. Or the worst mistake is hiring someone and then building a role around that person. You've got to make sure it's always, when it comes to structures, you've got to be really, really clear on what's that position that I'm hiring for, and really get clear on the roles and responsibilities. Then how do I fit a square peg in that square hole and make sure that that person is the right fit for them? Then when you get them in, you release the time, and then bang, that's when you worry about growth and optimization within that structure of that person.
So do you, Rob, typically advise, and if we're jumping into the next episode here, let me know, but do you sort of start with the org chart?
I do, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Always start with the org chart and
The org chart.
The org chart, org chart, and I always start there. That's always my reference point of how we grow our business.
So for you guys out there that aren't familiar with that, we'll probably give an example of one in the next episode. But essentially, it's a map which indicates, what the positions are within the business, which people are representing those positions, or which people are currently filling those positions, and maybe we'll get into what that looks like down the track as well. So where you've got your existing one, which is your current org chart, and then in order to facilitate and strategize the growth of your organization, typically you would have what we call a forecasted org chart. I'm not quite sure what you call it, but it's basically what the business needs to look like in 12 months if we're going to get to this target.
Correct. And I think the principle when it comes to current state versus future state org charts is we've got to remember that the org chart doesn't necessarily change from a structures point of view. It's just that as the owner, as the business grows, you take off one hat, like you said before, and put it on someone else's head. And I think the principle there is that when you're growing a business, you don't scale your time, you scale your team. So it's scale team, not time. And that principle is really important to remember, because I know within my business as a coaching company, I've been going for 12 years ago, and many, many years ago when I was a one-man band, I had say 15 odd clients, 10 to 15 odd clients, and that's a pretty heavy load for a one-on-one coach. Now we've got 120 clients in our coaching organization, and that doesn't mean I work 10 times harder. It just means that I've gone from a team of one to there's 10 of us in the team now. And so in order for this coaching business to unlock our growth and be able to touch the lives of more people within our organization, it doesn't require me to work longer and harder. It's required me to build out team and delegate the responsibilities out to my team. And so for the listeners, growing a business isn't about you scaling time. It's about scaling team. And it gets to a point in business where it's no longer, growing a business isn't about working longer and harder. The success of the business is determined not by how hard you work, but how well you lead a group of people around you. And that leadership is of the structure that you build. And when a trades business owner gets that mindset and they go, I can run $1 million business working 80 hours a week, or I can run a $3 or $5 million business and run and work 40 hours a week, then why wouldn't I? And so it all comes, it's not about scaling the time you work in business. Your growth isn't a reflection of your time. Your growth is a reflection of how well you build out your team and lead that team to derive the outcome that the business wants to achieve.
So why don't we talk about some of those, like from a strategic point of view, some of those things that you do need to equip the team with in order, unless we're treading on the next episode, but like, things that you need to basically equip your team with if you're going to enable them or give them, for choice of better words, give them the best opportunity to succeed within that position. Because I know, recently we've gone through this evolution within our own business where, and it's not that it's new, but it's just that it needed a bit of a refresh, and we needed to, and we need to dial things in a little bit better in relation to, well, okay, let's take the focus off the individual and have everyone on the team needs to understand they're part of a machine that's moving towards a bigger goal.
Yeah.
And like one person succeeding in a position over here, what does success look like first of all? So, what are the deliverables for that job? What's the KPI? Like how do they know if they're on track, and how do they know if they're succeeding? Because we've all been in that situation before where you go and hire someone and you want the golden, you want the unicorn. It's like, just come and fix all the problems, but they don't really understand what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't really understand, what it looks like to be for a win. So that's where you hear things like KPIs and stuff like that coming into play. And KPIs don't need to be complex either. It could just be like if it's your sales team, it could be bring in 3 new qualified leads a week or something simple. It's just something that you can measure definitively for each person within your department in your business, so they know, have you done this or haven't you done it? Okay, you haven't done it. How do we get you to this point? Is it a training issue? Is it a process issue? Is it a personality issue? Are you lazy? Like it just gives you the ability to sort of keep them on track. The other thing is, we've found that, and this is probably more relevant to businesses as they grow. Like, okay, well, individuals, okay, you might be performing well, but your department's failing. So if you look at your department KPIs, they're down. Like yours are up, which is great, which means your team's letting you down. So you need to have that conversation with the team and figure out what's going on there with the rest of them, And then the departments need to understand the picture that plays within the organization. And it gets a little bit complex, but the purpose of this is just clarity. Like you just want the team to know if they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of elements to that. I think one of them there's some strategy things, and then there's some soft skills that the leader, the owner, needs to develop.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to remember, a lot of trades and construction business owners, they're very good at their trade, but they've never learnt management skills. They've never learnt how to be a great manager or a great leader, and so you got to develop that. And as you grow a business, like a lot of trades guys and girls, they spend all this time going through their apprenticeship, getting qualified, building their experience, and then they get into business. And you got to remember that the moment you step into business, you got your training wheels back on again, and you've got to go on a journey to develop those skills. And so when you're growing a business, you have to accept that that's going to require you to build out a team, and therefore you're dealing with humans and people and all the complexities that come with people. And that scares a lot of people, not because, and you talk to a lot of old trades guys going, oh, is this easier when it was just me and apprentice? And I tried to grow it and I shrunk it back because it was easier back then. But a lot of those guys have that mentality because they never structure their business right to begin with, and they never develop the leadership and management capability to manage a good team. And so I think some of the soft skills that a lot of business owners can learn and develop, number one is delegation, like just good fundamentals of how to delegate, good accountability skills, like how to actually hold people accountable, how to run effective meetings, not just toolbox talks for the guys on the ground, but when you start building out your operational structure, how do we delegate, hold them accountable, and then have meetings to close the feedback loop? So
Correct.
it's things like that. It's the ability to how to lead and empower your team so you can get the most amount of performance out of something. Because as you grow out a team, you become one removed, and it's about getting the most out of that person for the job that you used to do. So now you've got to lead that person and navigate through them. So it's about performance management. It's about empowering your team. It's holding them accountable. It's all these soft skills that so many trades business owners have never learnt, but you have to go down that journey to develop those skills, because if you don't develop them, your business will never grow past that skill set that you've currently got. And I think that's really important to remember, is that your business will never outgrow you. So if you don't continue to develop and grow that leadership capability and management capability, then your business will naturally plateau, because you become your greatest limitation for the business's success.
And as important as that is, it's also important that you start developing leaders. It's something that I've noticed, you know, and kind of done okay at. But there's be understanding, or if I need somebody over here to run this part of the business, they need to also have leadership qualities that team members can follow. So it's not I suppose the principles are the same, but again, as a business owner, you kind of got to take the blinkers off and zoom out a little bit to look at the bigger picture, which is very hard to do sometimes. This is why having allocated strategy time in your calendar is important, because it gives you the ability to zoom out a little bit and to take a bit more to focus on these things that are important and often get neglected.
How many times do you hear a trades owner say, "Oh, my best apprentice has turned into my best tradesman," and I've still
Yeah,
got my first apprentice, and he's been with me this whole time, and that's because you spent time developing that apprentice. And so
yeah.
it's the same thing all the way through the organization. You want to be able to get to the point where you're you're always developing your people within, and that's why I love about growing a business, is that it gives people career paths, and you develop your apprentices to be good tradesmen to become good leading hands to be future estimators or project managers. So you're developing your team from within, and that's generally the best way to keep growing a business, because you can build it from the inside out, and the culture becomes really strong, rather than always bringing outside resources in.
So where do we let's maybe take a step back here, and let's say there's listeners or viewers out there that are one, two, three, four guys, and they maybe wanting to get to 10 or whatever. Like, why don't we start from the base layer here as to where to start and how to sort of get that moving for them.
Mm. Do you want me to transition into drawing out the structure?
Are we going to do this in the next episode? Because if so, we can wrap this one up and we can come back. We'll come back in that next episode and we'll address that.
Let's wrap it up, and we'll do it up in the next episode.
Yeah, okay. Bit of a cliffhanger there for you guys, but essentially, um, I think from my perspective, like, you guys, there's a lot of information about this stuff out there available, and in truth, you need to be in a position, and this is the God honest truth. You've got to get yourself into a mindset where you want to learn these things,
Yeah.
because if your mindset's not right and you're not wanting to actually educate yourself in this space, you could listen to every podcast and read every book on the planet and you won't absorb any of it. And so it really does take like a penny drop moment for you to actually make that transition within your own head. And once you've done that, once you've lowered that barrier of resistance and you're willing to sort of take on counsel, you'd be amazed at the sort of insight you can get through, coaches and books and podcasts and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there's just a plethora of them, which I could throw at you, which I'm not going to. But the point is, you've got to be willing and you've got to want to actually and be accepting of the fact that what you currently know within your business is not going to get you to where you want to be, based on the fact that you just don't have those skills. And that's not a negative, that's not an attack on you. Like, you just never learn them. You can learn them and you will learn them if you want to, but it's just not part of our system when we're growing up in the trades. So don't be afraid of it, like, embrace it, and you'll be amazed at the results.
And I think taking that another step further is, and until the reality is that um, general stats that and these stats might be a little bit older and they were pre-COVID and everything, but um, stats are that only 6% of businesses in Australia turn over more than $2 million, and that's across the board. Stats pre-COVID as well were almost 1 in 2, so it was about a 60-40 split of uh, uh, almost 1 in 2 businesses are profitable, and the other half are breaking even or worse yet going backwards. That was pre-COVID days. They're pretty alarming stats that you got to be only 6% of businesses turn over more than $2 million.
Yeah, but then you've also got to take into consideration, like this is the whole conversation around turnover versus what's left over, like, and I often encourage guys not to get too caught up with, turnover. That's why we put so much emphasis in our business on net profit ratios and percentages, not just dollar value, but the percentage, because like you could be turning a $2 million. I mean, you look at some of these huge corporations that are turning billions and billions of dollars, and they've got a 0.10% profit or something. Like you can have it's this exactly gives credit to what I was saying before about the company, the plumbing company, where they were 100 staff and they were making less money with 100 staff than they were when it was 6 staff. Like I think you just
you are right, but we got to remember, for the most trades businesses, they make 10 to 15% net, and so unless you get to a certain size, it's actually not worth it running your own business. I'm a big believer of that. Most people who run too smaller businesses would be way better off going and becoming a supervisor, earning their 120 to 150 grand a year, having holidays, and not carrying all the stress and pressure and risk that they're carrying when you run a micro business in the trade space. And so it's a big part you got to remember. Running a business is a big risk. It's a big obligation and a big responsibility, because you've got to be able to look after your family and, in my
and your
opinion,
team's families.
Sorry.
And your team members' families.
What's the point in carrying all that risk if you're not going to be remunerated and rewarded for it? And so I think we'll talk about it in the next episode around the structure. But I believe most trades business have to get to a certain point to make it worthwhile for them. Otherwise, they just never get out of the day-to-day grind, because they're just so sucked into that grind because of their lack of structure.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, we're going to come back, guys, and we're going to talk in the next episode about a bit more practically what this might look like, and visually as well. Rob's going to share some drawings and things like that on what this might look like. So if you guys are tuning into this episode via audio, that's cool. The next episode, you may want to head across to the SiteShow's YouTube channel, and you might want to watch the next one, or head across to the siteshow.com. The video will be embedded on that. So if you want to follow along and actually see what we're going to be talking about there, might make a little bit more sense. But we will do our best to try and make it as audio friendly as possible. Anyway, thanks again, Rob, for joining us. Rob's from Pravar Group, Pravar group.com. And he's been on the show many times. So just head across to siteshed.com and search Rob Kropp, and you'll it's with 2 P's, and all of his podcasts will pop up there. All right, Bobby, let's wrap this up. We'll come back in the next one.
Thanks, mate. See you there.
Ciao. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Please hit that subscribe button, get your notifications turned on so you get notified of our upcoming episodes, upcoming content, so on and so forth. And please do me a favor, share this video with someone else and leave us some of your experiences in the comments. We would love to hear them.